This
Uh,
conference will now be recorded.
Sharon, do you know if Trisha was going to make it? I thought she was going to be with us.
I thought so too, but I haven't heard from her otherwise.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead.
Okay. We all got Jan's summary with the questions and everything. Do you want to just start at the top or do you want to talk? I don't have a format in mind.
Yeah, my suggestion, well, first of all, I want to thank you guys for meeting ahead of this one and kind of having a discussion and sending me the list of comments and questions. So I was going to just go down that list and work it through. I was just going to look and see how I share my screen. I'm trying to, there we go. No. Okay, let's see if I can share your screen. Someone has to make me presenter for me to share my screen.
Oh, okay.
David on, he's red, muted.
Dave, can you make Janelle the presenter, please?
You're asking Dave Street to do it?
Yeah. Yes, he has to do it.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, he just did. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Oh, that changes everything.
It does change everything.
Yeah.
But I wanted to pull up this plan because I put some dimensions on it and added a couple things this morning based on your comments that I got late yesterday. And please interrupt me if you have a comment and questions, and I'll stop. I do think most of it's pretty straightforward, and so I think it'll be very helpful, and I think we can do things fairly quickly. The meeting room space, yes. You know, this this concept plan shows one room like it is now, no changes, just like you've been discussing. So I don't really see anything there. Does anyone have any other comments on that space or any changes we want to make?
Nope. You know, unless you include in that the storage room behind it that's not air conditioned or anything, but or heated.
Yeah, that would be something, yeah, that we can just add a note about. Yeah, this, you know, the purpose of this is to come up with a concept plan and then some budget estimates. And I have no idea. I can get a rough idea. I don't know enough about that space. I don't think it's insulated though, is it?
Janelle, there's some background noise, or you're kind of cutting in and out. I don't know what it is, but
I don't have noise here.
I have it here. I think
it might have been for someone else's mic being opened. Okay.
Right. If anyone could do it, hit the mute button when you're not speaking.
To answer your question, that back storage room is not insulated.
Okay, so that means, you know, it will be, you'll be spending a lot of money heating and cooling it because it's just going to go right through those metal walls. I mean, it's not designed to be heated and cooled.
Okay.
Janelle, can I add something?
It would need to be insulated, and that can be done. We just have to add that to the cost.
Yeah, if I can add that, this was kind of a last minute thought. This is something I was going to talk over with Josh that at some point that we would like to do this to make that available for more archival storage. But that's not quite as important as the other things right now. So.
Yeah, and that could be done at any time. That could be done before, it could be done later. It's really sort of a standalone project, but it is good to kind of keep a running list of, you know, those other kinds of things. And some of this we'll go through. I think the other big one is that idea of taking the children's early literacy area that I had in the old porch and outside that, and swapping it with teens. And I think that's a fine thing to do. There's positives and little negatives like any solution. And the nice thing is it's done really just with furniture. So it could be either at any time, it could be changed in the future, let's put it that way. So yes, definitely we could do the early literacy over where the staff work area is and take it down, and I can pull up, let me pull up. Shoot, uh-oh. This changed my screen somehow. I can't get up to pull up the next one. Huh. I've never had that happen on another one where I shared screen. Let me figure out how I can, let me see, shrink it a little. No, that doesn't work either. Huh. Now I've really messed it up. I don't know how to, I'm not familiar with GoToMeeting, so that's part of my problem. I apologize. I'm trying to pull up that one that Andrea did, which was very helpful. But basically, I think that works fine, and I'm happy to show that. The thing to remember is, though, that the teens will be much more visually hidden because their shelving is 66-inch high. So where we had low picture books at 42 before, we'll have high 66-inch shelving. I don't think we need quite that much, so I'll do a plan and show. And then if I can keep it open facing towards the children's desk, so there's more visibility into that area. The teens like not being kind of hidden. They do like that, but they are the age that can get in more trouble. So that would be my only concern in it. And you don't have a real active or heavy teen group now, and that could change, but they actually can be more disruptive than the little kids. But definitely, it sounds like everyone's sort of on page with that. So I'm happy to do that. I'll make that change. The other thing having to do with children's was, does it make sense to glass some of it? And I think the real discussion has to be, what kind of library do you want? I started working in libraries in the 70s, and everyone whispered and shushed, and, as a kid, you couldn't hardly talk in the library, and they weren't fun places to go. And I know your library is not like that at all. And families come and kids come and they have a good time. And so then you have others that are looking for a quiet place, unhappy. And that's why we put in trying to keep that atmosphere of being very approachable and a place everyone wants to go, and not a place full of rules that, you can't talk, or if your phone rings, you're looking around. So that's why we put in that quiet reading room, because it's much easier to let the people that want absolute quiet, a quiet place to go, than to try to make the whole library quiet. Now, yes, we could put a glass wall at some point. You could glass in just the early literacy, or the younger picture books and early literacy. But the negative in that is then it's that size. It can't it can't grow out or change. It limits your flexibility. Almost of all the libraries done, almost everyone that we did put a glass wall at children's, we ultimately came back and took it out because the library needed children's to expand or be different or rearrange, and they didn't have that flexibility. We could look at putting a glass wall where the existing exterior wall is. And one of the questions is that load bearing? I do not think so. I don't have access to the structural drawings from this building, but the drawings I do have shows columns along 3 columns along the wall. Well, actually 1, 2, 3, 4 along both the entry wall with the glass doors and the other side, and nothing in the middle. So it leads me to believe there's major beams, roof beams at those columns, which means there'll be one at that exterior wall as well, with columns at both exterior walls. And then there's another one at the, obviously, the old little porch or vestibule area. So I think you can open it. Right now, I left almost 10 feet or 9 feet of existing wall intact to create what would now be that teen alcove area or their area. Again, for not only visual, but also acoustic separation from the open new building with the high ceilings. Because that's also, I took it to where that mezzanine, the lower ceiling in the new building stopped. So it's, you know, if you can see my cursor, it's right there. So I think you can open that up. Now, could you put a glass wall there or a half glass wall? You could. It sort of defeats the purpose of opening it up, in my opinion, because what you'll have to only have one place that people could have a door and go through. The other thing I found is when we do that, and in this situation, you know, one of the questions were about entrances and that, you need to make a major decision on whether the existing entrance stays an entrance or we minimize it and it's one door and it's an emergency exit. By code, we're going to need an exit out of that space, and that's the logical place for that exit. But we could minimize it to one door. But what ends up happening is if that stays as an entrance, so we have the existing entrance and we have the new entrance at the main addition, that families will come in and use this, parents with kids, but because of that glass wall, and especially with the little kids over here, they won't even probably go into the adult and get their materials. They'll just come and go out of here. So it sort of creates two libraries, which was the whole thing you were trying to not do with keeping this wall. I mean, because it's going to be a major expense to take out that wall. And then to take it out and then put in a glass wall, that's more expensive than a gypboard wall by 2.5 times. I think it's a mistake, but if you want to do it, you could go ahead and do it. It is something, I mean, we could open it just up to ceiling height or even not quite all the way to ceiling height so that more sound gets trapped in the existing building. And then if you, like, we could open it only to 8 feet if we wanted to, or 9 feet, and have that big opening. That way, in the future, if you did decide to come back and put it in, it wouldn't cost really any more than doing it now. But it also will also affect airflow in that. But because these are really sort of two standalone buildings, you have an HVAC system for the existing one, there'll be one for the new addition. That shouldn't be a problem. But that's the other thing that often keeps you from putting in a glass wall. But that's why if you put one, that I probably wouldn't put it over at early literacy or over there, because then you will start having probably HVAC problems in that with return and supply and have to do more major changes. If the more we can keep it as is, the better the existing system will work.
Before you continue, Andrea, because we're talking about glass walls and you're in favor of them, would you like to speak to anything she's said?
Sure. I guess we have to discuss if we're going to have a loud library or if we want to have a quiet library for the adults. Because if the whole thing is going to be loud and we're going to say this is going to be loud and everybody agrees to that, then I don't have to worry about taking my kids through and everybody's just talking. But that's going to depend on what the feel of the adult area is going to be. If it's going to be quiet, I would rather have a glass wall for me to go in and then the kids can be kids. But if the whole area is going to be open like that, and like we commit to that, saying this is the policy that we're going to have, we're not going to be shushing, we're not going to be saying this is quiet down or anything, we can talk on phones or whatever in that area, then yeah, I don't see the point in glass at that point.
Well, I will say, and I understand exactly what you're saying. The adult area should be quieter, just because the distance, like the early literacy area for that 0 to 5 in the picture book area is 75 feet from the nearest seat in adults, and 125, 150 feet almost to the far edges of the adult area. So there are places for people to get far away from children's. And if especially there's that quiet study room that anyone that wants quiet can go to, and it'll seat, 5 people. Also, we have that table tucked in back by the computers. Again, my experience has been adults are just as loud talking to each other at computers so I haven't seen a public library in the last 10 years that was a quiet library. Now, some are quieter than others due to the finishes in that. And I think if we can look at, I don't remember exactly what ceiling tiles in the existing building, but the type of ceiling tile, if you don't put a gypboard ceiling, and that would be one of the recommendations I think we would want to make to the architect on that addition, is that there is no gypboard ceilings in there, because that just bounces sound around, that we have good absorptive ceiling tiles that allow the sound to come up and not come back down. That, and depending on the flooring you use, you can make the space a lot quieter. What causes the noise that bothers people, actually some background noise is actually good. It makes it easier to concentrate, and you don't hear every little noise if they're, and again, the HVAC can give you some of that background noise. And I lost the other thought I was just going to say. But I think, yes.
Well, while you're talking about this interface between two buildings, right? I was pleased to see that you had that area opened up considerably there between the old building and the new building. Have you or anybody had any extensive discussions with either the Danson Davis architects or anybody on the city staff about how these two buildings, which are different, you've got a steel, metal, pre-engineered building that's going to be the new addition, how those two will interface at that wall, and how thick that interface will be between the two structures. And have you had any discussion about how those interface and how that opening can be supported? And what, if you open it up, do you still have to have some steel structure across the top of that opening in order to support the rest of the wall and all that?
We have not had any discussions. We've not been allowed to meet with the architects. We have met with the city manager, and he is open to us opening that wall. There has not been any investigation in that wall. You could put a hole in it, or you could actually probably pop the ceiling tiles and look above and get a clear picture. No one's done that yet. Mine is based just on where existing columns are. The new you're right, is a metal building, and it will have a separate structure. There will be, I am positive, a 1-inch or 3/4-inch expansion, continuous expansion joint between those two, floor, walls, ceiling, everything with a cover on it so that they can move independently. But my guess is, though, that there'll be the roof structure, and that it'd be just the same as what's over the other columns. I mean, again, if someone got out there, especially a structural engineer that went out there and popped up the ceiling and looked, could say, and the local architects may have done that. I just don't know. I've never met them. We've never been able to even have a phone call with them. Unfortunately, it's been kind of like two things. I have no idea. The last drawings I got were many months ago, which I can pull up, and they're not very far along. So it's hard to know.
I bring this up because originally all we had was a couple of doors between the two buildings.
Right.
And at that time, people were saying, we cannot open it up because then we're going to have to put a sprinkler system into the buildings, and that needs to be a firewall and all of these kind of things. And now you're saying you think we do have some latitude on opening that.
Yes, the last plan the architects came back with, they moved that firewall to between the restrooms and that kitchen meeting storage to the other side of the addition. So the firewall, there's a firewall between the meeting area and the library big box.
Okay.
So they moved the
So the
firewall.
firewall is on that side of the building then?
Yes, and the reason they needed one is because he's connecting, City Hall, those meetings, this new addition and the library. So then it was way too big. So I guess we questioned it and they moved it. So they must have done the code analysis and decided they could move it.
Well, I think going forward, somebody from this group and/or our liaison from the city council will need to have some specific meetings with the architects and the design people to understand how these two buildings interface. Just working off of our city manager's thoughts at this stage of the game, we eventually got to get some real engineers involved.
Well, and the architects have engineered, yeah, and I have, I don't know if Jan's has any knowledge. I have no knowledge of what meetings have gone on between the city manager and, the design team for that new addition.
Danelle, I have never had a conversation with the architects, but I did mention to Josh one time that you would like to be able to talk to them just to, find out some of this information that you're still needing. So hopefully we'll try to get something set up so that you can ask the questions that you need to.
Well, and it actually might be helpful for the committee. I mean, if we just could have a discussion with them so that we could all understand, what their plans are to date. And, because I also think, there was talk of acoustics, and I know that's a big concern of a lot of people. And so knowing what kind of ceiling tile they're talking about, what are some of the interior finishes, even things where we're showing that quiet reading room and then those two study rooms and then your office, those walls, separating those, need to go all the way to the underside structure of the mezzanine. Otherwise, sound can go up through the ceiling, across the top of the wall into the next space. And the last thing you want is someone in that study room to hear Jan having a conversation or vice versa. She's hearing everything they're saying and the quiet study room wouldn't be quiet. And I can give them even wall designs to make sure that we don't have them. They're not expensive. They're just have to be detailed. Most of these solutions really don't have much cost impact. They just have to have some thought, and especially architects that don't do libraries, they're thinking, oh, it's just like two offices. Well, we really don't want a group in one that might be talking loud or might even be watching a video in one of those study rooms, to be heard either in the library or out.
Yeah, I apologize. I wish I had thought to ask if the architect could join us today. It just now occurred to me. So I apologize for that.
Well,
but
I do think we do need to have this conversation. And I don't know, it's really up to Josh how he wants to handle it, but it could be when we just maybe present our final concept plan and kind of our list of recommendations and questions, so that we feel like, we kind of have our package of what we think is needed. And that might be be a little more proactive way to do it. I don't know.
We now have a new liaison to the city council. And I think that we talked after the in-person meeting the other day, and I think he's absolutely willing to go and speak, try to get the bid in advance, speak to the architects, do all that kind of stuff. And we didn't invite him to this meeting either, and he should have been here today, Kevin Sullivan.
Okay.
he's here.
I'm here, Sharon.
So I'm going to get a hold of him after this, and maybe he will, oh, Kevin!
He's
Kevin's
on.
here. Yeah, I'm here. Hey,
Okay. We
if
were
I,
just
if I
talking
could just
about how we
comment,
need
is somebody capturing that thought that Danielle had about the acoustical issues so that that is not forgotten?
I
Once
can,
there's
I
interface,
can
once-
kind of put together a list of acoustical suggestions. You know, my husband's an acoustical engineer, so I have more resources and knowledge and have taken more classes probably than 95% of architects. And many of the architects I work with on projects do not even understand the concepts of acoustics. So, and I have no idea, this architect may be wonderful, but it is important because those little things make a difference. So I'm looking at, okay, so for now, are we saying we're not going to put any glass? Or what is the general feeling of the group as a whole?
Well, as a staff person, that's the main complaint I hear is people think it's too loud. And as a staff person, that's one of the things that I find out in the community is like, I come up to people who have children. I'm like, how come y'all don't come to the library? And they're like, I can't stand having to keep the kid quiet. So, I don't think I've made it any secret. I don't think it would be all that bad to have glass across the connection if we were able to have a door that's large enough to leave open if we don't need to have that glass enclosed. If we have no kids in the library, there's no reason to have that closed. But if kids come in and they start getting loud, then it's nice to be able to close it up. That's just my 2 cents.
Rachel, who gets on to the kids? Is that personnel or is that other?
No, it's just the thought of taking your kid into the library and you have to be quiet. Because, libraries have changed, but the general idea of the library hasn't filtered down.
Because I like what Danielle said about keeping it open as one big library, and that's caused me to really rethink. I think the glass is pretty, but I still like that idea of it all being open in one big library, and we just have to change a mindset there.
Yeah, so really, as Andrea was saying, we really need to have a conversation as almost a group. What do we want the library to be? Because if it's okay for adults to talk, then it's okay for kids to play. But if we're going to try to have a quiet side and a kids side and let kids play, then I think people are going to be unhappy.
Can I make a comment here? Personally, I've always wanted that space open, but I understand what Rachel and Andrea are saying. But one of the comments earlier that Danelle mentioned about noise in the library or that libraries are not the quiet places anymore. The main complaints we get are not about children, they're about adults talking. And those complaints are coming from the computer users because the computers are set up right in front of the front desk, a circulation desk. People like to come into the library. I mean, it's a small community where everyone knows each other or are meeting each other, and people like to talk. So I don't foresee the main part of the library ever being very quiet. I don't mean it'll be like a party sit type thing, but people like to come in and share news or what's going on with their families. And so the main thing for me that we have these quiet study rooms is a big factor where a computer user, we're hoping we can have laptops that they can check out and go maybe sit in a study room. And then, but the computers that you have lined up there in front of the hallway entrance, Danelle, where the public computers would be in front of my new office study rooms. That's the people we were trying to protect from noise so much. We have headphones for them and that type of thing, but our main complaints are about adults. And so,
and that's also why we created this kind of living room up front with lounge seating where people could sit and visit. with other things farther away. And 2 pods. They really actually, because they're upholstered and come up, you know, towards the top of your head, they're quiet places as well. So what we were trying to do was create options for people. So they could come and visit their neighbor and sit up front. They could, we could also look at rearranging and putting pods farther back. But the idea is that, you know, someone could sit here, quietly work. There's the computers, which is an option. There's a table back by the computers, but there's also tables towards the front if they want to work and see people coming and going like their neighbors. And then there's the quiet study in back, which typically many libraries make that almost a silent room. But you can set any kind of rules, and these rooms all have glass fronts, so they're floor to ceiling or floor to at least 8-foot high glass along here that you can see in. And it would be nice to get some windows along this outside wall so that the quiet study, the study rooms, and Jan's office had some natural light. And because there's glass in front. Now, Jan's office, I did half glass, so there's a solid wall up to about 32 and then glass above, so that you could put something low against that wall, like a bookshelf or a file cabinet, is the thinking. But if all those had windows, and you have windows, you know, on the entry wall, then, you know, you're getting light from both directions, and those windows will draw you towards the back and through the stacks. So we were trying to create, you know, tables in different areas, enclosed and open and semi-enclosed with the pods, and then lounge seating in different locations from, you know, the quiet study to the living room area. You know, so again, it was trying to give options, because you do have a public library is one of the hardest buildings because it serves everyone from cradle to grave. And even someone my age, you know, in their mid-60s, I go to the library for different things. One day I may want it quiet because I want to concentrate. Another day, you know, I want to kind of be more social and be around other people and sit somewhere else. So it's really about giving them options.
Jan, if I could, I'd like to make a couple of comments. So with regard to the glass wall, it seems like folks want it to be open between the 2 areas. And my thought process is, if you're using glass as the divider, from a visual perspective, it's still going to seem very open between the 2 sides. And then if you have, like, I believe yesterday when we were talking, they talked about having sliding glass doors as part of that glass wall. And if you want it to be open, you know, just open the doors, and it can be more open both visually and from an auditory standpoint. But if you want to close it off, you can, and it's still visually, you know, as if it's open because it's glass. One of the comment I would make is that I wouldn't say that, you know, going back to dip again to get more money. Let's say, for example, you built this building and did the inside without the glass wall to start with, and then ultimately you made a decision that you wanted it. You'd have to come back to council for additional funds to do that. And I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying I believe it would be harder than asking for the money upfront and just making it part of the construction at the beginning. So I don't really see any downsides, to be honest with you, with having the wall there. But I do see downsides to not having it at the beginning and then having to come back and get money for it if you want it later on.
I agree with everything you said, except there is a downside. There's not flexibility. Once that wall's there, you know, you can't move things. Children's couldn't get bigger, adults couldn't get larger. And this library is going to be there for the next 30, 40 years or 50 years. And folding glass walls, or sliding ones, don't seal as well. So acoustically, they're not going to be near as good. And they're very expensive if they work well. And they take up space as they stack. So you just have to think about all of those things. I'm not saying you can't do it and it's not a good idea, but it is, those sliding glass walls that work well are very expensive. So, and I've used them, they're good, they work, and we can do it. You don't want to do this lightly because there is a cost, a pretty big cost involved.
I
It
have
would
one
seem,
question, Neil, too, is the safety of the glass. I'm assuming it's a very safe glass that a child can't run into and get
Yeah,
hurt.
it's tempered. It has to be. Code requires it. So yeah, there's not a problem with safety.
I would think so.
it would seem to me if you went with the sliding glass that you're going to either keep it closed most of the time or open most of the time, which means you're defeating the purpose of having it or not having it. I don't see it being something that, you know, why would you keep it open? Why would you keep it closed? I mean, I just don't see that we'd be going back and forth, and I agree it's just an unnecessary expense.
Do people want to take a vote and decide on that at this moment?
Madam Chairwoman, would you be taking public comments?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I just want to, my name is Paul Roberts. Good morning, everyone. You guys have delved into this quite a bit, and I've attended the past couple of meetings, and thank you for all the time y'all are putting in this. I just want to comment real quick on this conversation about noise levels and glass delineation between the rooms, et cetera. As a father of 3 children, ages 11, 10, and 8, I can tell you that similar to someone else who spoke a few minutes ago, it's difficult to keep them quiet, generally speaking, especially when they're in mass and you get a lot of kids in there for a given project, whether it be a story time or popcorn after school and there's a movie, whatever the case is. Glass walls, you're talking about safety glass. That gets really expensive, and you're talking about multiple dollars per inch. Very, very expensive. It's cost prohibitive. My understanding is it's not currently budgeted for, and it just kind of seems counterintuitive in terms of viability. And I would encourage y'all to forego that. But that's just my input, and I have not delved into this to the degree that you guys have. So thank you for your time.
Just my comment is I was very pleased to see our ability to open up that area between the 2 buildings. So I'd vote for keeping it open and not going to the expense at this time of the glass.
Anybody else want to comment on glass, and then we'll move on?
I can go either way with it. Whatever the majority is, I'll live with it either way.
We're just making a recommendation, right? Who would make the final decision, Jan? Would you think that Josh would go by our recommendation?
Well, I think it would definitely be yeah, I think that would definitely, he'll definitely look at that. So, but who will make the final decision? I mean, I can't say for sure.
I mean, at any point he could go through and hatchet any of the expenses, right?
I think so, to my knowledge. It's, yeah, I mean, I don't know what to say. We haven't, yeah, let me just leave it at that. Yeah, I think
The city council will have to approve the costs. And if they delineate the extra cost or so for the glass doors and sliding glass doors, I think they'll probably be pretty quick to cut that out. Because like Paul mentioned, it is very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're talking like tens of thousands of, you're talking like $10,000+ guys. This isn't a $1,000 line item. You're talking like $10,000 to $30,000 for this.
Yeah, the width of that opening is getting closer to 30,000. Yes, you're correct.
Easy. I mean, a 20-foot span can run you $100,000 in a nice home with 10-foot ceilings. I mean, this isn't. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is just over 20 feet, even with me leaving about 10 of it. And part of the reason I left that, again, it was at the high part and not the mezzanine part. It would look strange if we opened the whole wall. So I'm suggesting we open 21 feet of it or so, which will make a huge difference. But
I'd like to see it remain open. No glass.
And on a quick other statement, Danelle, please do include windows in the those study rooms back there. When we were talking yesterday, we only talked about Jan's room, but if you're gonna have windows, I think they're appropriate for all those rooms in the backside.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. I did have one other question about under the children's and teens. It said, consider moving computers next to wall. Or then it says two things. It says, consider relocating computer tables away from center of the room to create more open area for flexible use. So was that like, what kind of uses, and you're thinking of moving it back towards that storage room, or I'm not sure who the comments came from or what the thinking was. So I just want to know so we move it to the right location.
I'm one of the people that wants to see that move. For one thing, you've got kids sitting in the middle of a room using computers, and it's right in the main traffic area where people are moving back and forth from the children's area behind it back to the hallways. And it would be very distracting for children trying to use a computer with everybody going back and forth around them, looking over their shoulder. Oh, what are you doing? I think they should be moved to the quiet area, not in the middle of that room. And where you want,
okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah. Well, where you want to move it, I don't know. I like putting them on the back wall because it's nice and quiet back there. They're out of the mainstream, and it would be, you know, they wouldn't be distracted by other people.
Okay.
I was just going to add that I think there are floor outlets in that area already because two or four of our computers used to be there a few years ago. So there are some outlets there.
But if, you could put a study table there too, that could then plug in and use it.
Yeah.
They're one of the things later on the list talked about, I don't know where existing outlets are. I don't have any drawing that shows that. What I was showing is where we definitely need outlets, either floor outlets or wall outlets. But we could easily put them along that exterior wall by that storage, so they would be close to the desk, so the children's librarian or whoever was at that desk could see if a child needed help, or so we could easily put them along the wall there. That wouldn't be a problem at all.
Well, Jan, don't we currently have children's computers on the back wall?
Yes, we have 3 back there right now, and we'll probably need to add at least one more, maybe at least one more. So.
Right, so there is places to hook more computers on the back wall. It's not as though they have to run new wiring.
I don't think they would. I have to go back and take a look, but I don't think it would need additional wiring.
I'd like to see us move on to the new meeting room, since there's no money to furnish or do anything in the old space. And Danelle, I'd like to move on to the new meeting room and our ideas for that, because that's what we need to get done before the end of the year. So, now that we've decided to maybe leave that opening, we are talking about putting in a front entranceway with a glass wall or a wall, a welcoming area that's protected on both sides from heat and air conditioning. And we want wide double doors that are automatic so we can handle baby strollers, wheelchairs, walkers, and all that kind of stuff. And is this building going to be ADA compliant?
Yes, it has to be. Even your existing building has to be brought up. So everything will be ADA compliant.
I think the bid that we're going to get from the city, or the agreement for the original build, is just for that new building. It is not for the existing library. That money will come later in the game.
Right, but it will still have to be brought up to,
So do you think that should be included in the original bid? To do the, not just build a
well,
new building?
that's how I would do it, but that's not how the city has decided to do it. They're doing this new addition and then doing the existing building, which will mean the library will move into the new and vacate the old. So temporarily you'll be all in that new while the existing is renovated. At least that's my understanding to date.
Okay.
I think we can get that clarified fairly soon, can't we, Kevin?
Yep, yeah, I can ask Josh about that.
Janelle, I have a question. You know, on the architectural drawings that Josh sent us just prior to your visit to the library, it had I believe it had the 2 sets of double doors on the main entrance to the library.
Yeah.
Did I look at that correctly?
Yes, they did, and I changed it because part of the problem with those 2 sets is, one, it adds $8,000, and it's a whole bunch of your area that you can't use because you've just taken 300 square feet that you can't use for library space of people coming and going. There's just, and your traffic doesn't warrant it. I mean, 80,000 square foot libraries have a single set of double doors. If they're automatic, you just don't need it. So yes, I did change that. You know, just
Yeah,
like,
thank you. I like the 1 set of doors also. And I had mentioned, I noticed you added the vestibule. I haven't talked to Josh about that because we've talked about that front porch, but I think it would be really wise to have an enclosed, I'm calling it vestibule for lack of a better word, where perhaps that's where we could have the screen with the scrolling electronic news messages coming up, or the Friends of the Library wall, or we could use that for something. And it gives the public a little place to kind of come in. If it's raining, you can pull your raincoat off or put your umbrella down or whatever. Just a little added space there.
I've lost my marked up one, but so what was the question about the new meeting rooms that was brought up?
Sharon, I asked about that. I was not sure. Sharon?
What new I don't remember bringing up meeting rooms. What?
You did. You said meeting room. I think you meant the new addition building.
Oh, yeah.
It just happened to be titled new meeting room on item 5 of the notes from yesterday, and that really probably is the new building and the city hall areas.
Yeah. Shoot, my drawing disappeared. I'm having trouble. I can't get to my tagged. Don't know what's going on here. Anyways, some of the questions about the spaces included, you know, how big was the janitor's closet? It's 9 by 6, so it's a decent size. The idea of maybe a catering kitchen. This kitchen could be used as a catering kitchen. It's 9 feet by 12 feet, so it's a nice size. It only has the refrigerator and counter and storage along one wall. And the thinking was the other wall could have, you know, a folding table or movable table or trash cans under. It gives you flexibility, so there's not a lot built in, which I found works actually better for catering, because sometimes they want more layout space, but you don't always need that. And then another question was about the table and chair storage. And yeah, the drawing shows all the chair dollies, and so the amount of chair, if you put as many chairs as possible in the new 2 meeting rooms when they're open, and using 20 per dolly, and if you use high density meeting chairs, typically they can go 40 high, stack 40 high. The problem is most women can't lift even light chairs up that high, and they're kind of unwieldy to move. So I use 20 high because that's very easy to manage and easier to move. So this is the maximum number of dollies you would need. And it easily fits in that 9 by 18.6. Another question was that IT room, and Jan and I have no idea what that's planned for. We'd have to ask the architects. I don't know if it's an HVAC for that. I'm assuming the HVAC for the main library block is up in the mezzanine, because they didn't show any on the first floor, and it makes sense to put it there because it'll be a lot cheaper than to run the ceiling ducts, coming from above, just like you would in a attic or a ceiling area. But that IT room is very big. It's same size as that storage room, basically 9 by 18 feet, 6 inches. I'm trying to think of, I'm looking, let's see. And the size of the stair is 8 by 18, and the restrooms are 18 by, not counting the hall, 22. Because those were some of the questions asked. Definitely that stairway would not be accessible. You should not, well, depending on who your local code official is and how they read it, whether you would have to have that as an emergency exit so that you could push the panic and go straight out from that side. We also have, you're going to have to either have the door to the restrooms be the second exit out of that main open area, or those stairs. And if it's the restrooms, then that door is going to have to swing the other direction, the path of travel. Again, my scope was not to do the code research or any of that. For that, that's a long, involved technical process that takes a lot of time, and you're already paying someone to do that, so that will be their job to look at that. I'm looking, note about not skipping on the divider, and I totally agree with that. You have to use really good ones or not bother. I think that covers, just a couple quick things on back to children's, even though I know we spent a lot of time. One was make sure there's ample seating for parents. We were trying to show a variety of different kinds of chairs and chair and a half. We have not done any furniture. This is a concept plan that shows kind of placeholders. I'm happy to help with that if that's decided, and look at different options. But we typically do, just a variety of different kinds. Again, that's easy to move. I found building in the least amount of furniture possible is the best, because every time I've built something in, I've been asked to come back and rip it out and put in something movable. The more flexibility, I can't say it enough. I've been doing this too long that I've worked on certain buildings 6 and 7 times over the last 35, 40 years. And everything has gone to more flexible, mobile, the least walls and the least built in as possible. But the other question that came up was family restroom. Benefits of having a family restroom versus the extra space for the storage. That storage room is decent sized. It is basically 5.5 feet deep, and it's 9 feet wide. So it's decent size. We could maybe make it slightly, well, no, we really can't because in the HVAC. By code, it's a national part of the code now that we have to have a lactation room somewhere in the building. It's designed for staff, but most libraries put them in a public area. So we have to have the lactation and the family restroom. Almost every library is putting them in these days for a number of reasons. One is so a father and a daughter can go in there if needs help. You know, a mother with a 6-year-old son that doesn't want to go in the public restrooms by themselves because they don't know what's in there, takes them into the women's and they're embarrassed. As us baby boomers are getting older, and I know with my family, when my dad had dementia, if he went in the men's restroom, he may not come back out, and we would stand there and wait. So it gives older couples or anyone to use. It's actually a neutral for transgender that addresses that issue. It's just a common practice today. They're not child-sized fixtures because, again, anyone over 5 or 6 refuses to use a kiddie potty, and they don't have them at home, so they can use them, you know, an adult size or regular size in a library. So that's just my, the family restroom is not required. It does count as one of your restroom fixtures, so it's not like you're necessarily having to do extra plumbing fixtures. You are doing an extra room, and it does need to be ADA, both that lactation and the family restroom. So they are a little larger than they were, you know, 20 years ago.
Janelle, I had a question about the lactation room. I was looking at your detailed details of the children's area. I had suggested that we put a one-way glass window in that room so that ladies could look out. Otherwise, it's like going into a closet. And that
You're
was
right.
not included in your description.
Well, one-way glass really only works if the side that you can't see is much darker than the other. So they would have to have the lights very low for it to work. But some libraries put in like a TV monitor, you know, with cable in it or something. Obviously color helps, but you're absolutely right. They are small, and we technically need a sink in it by code. And truthfully, I found that many young mothers don't use them anyways. They just do it in public and drape, you know, something over. That's just what they're used to doing. So even though it's required, the people that do use it tend to be ones like staff that is pumping or doing that kind of thing. So it gives them a private place as well as feeding. But you do raise a point about it does feel like a closet, and that's probably why also why a lot of women don't use it. Some have actually, you know, if we put the other thing we could do, I'm not sure if technically that would count, if we combine the lactation and family restroom to make it bigger, you know, and just do a family restroom with a nice chair in it, because the sink's already there. I haven't checked that out. The language doesn't address that, so I'm not sure.
I have one other comment when we were talking about the transition from the library into the city halls. We have the stairway there. Would it be worth considering putting a door underneath the end of the stairwell and putting some storage area under the stairs? It would be easy to put a door in while you're doing the construction, but it would be expensive to do it if you decide to do it later. Because a lot of homes that have stairways have closets under the stairways that it's a good place to store things. Anyway, just a thought.
Yes, I have it in my stairway. I did that when I did my house. It's a lot harder to do it in this kind of occupancy. You really can't store anything in the stairway because it's an emergency exit and it's rated a fire room. It's just different. And we need to be able to go direct. Right now, I have it so you go directly under the high part of the stair. So you wouldn't get much storage. You go up and around so that you could exit directly out. But again, that would be something the architects, when they detail it, could look and check the code to make sure. But I've never been able to do it because libraries are their code, fire code and life safety code has them as a assembly occupancy. So there's a lot stricter codes than there would be to an office space or other kinds, just because of the number of people and how the building's used.
Danelle, I have a question. I think you know, in the future, when we start to use the second story, we'll have to have the elevator back there. And did you mention to me one time there has to be a mechanical closet somewhere too? Would that
There'll have to be a elevator machine room, but that can be up on the second level. Has to be close to it. And there will be this outside stair that they show. So they show, see this outside stair coming up to the mezzanine. They do not show an elevator machine room, but again, these were very, very conceptual that they did. But it will need a second stair. But they do show a future restroom. I would hope that this one's large enough that you don't need, because technically you don't have to have a restroom on every floor. So hopefully you don't need that future restroom, that you could use that space. But one of the things you might want to be thinking about is, and be prepared to talk about how that space would be used in the future. You know, does it just open sitting area, study area, or does it have some study rooms, or does it, you could block off one end and actually wouldn't need this hallway then, so you could make like this whole area right in here a maker space or conference room or other kind of, or it could be a computer. It would get, right now, one of my concerns is you have 3 meeting spaces, one that can be opened, the new one that can be opened into a larger one. But they're almost all the same size, and having one that's a smaller size, when I've had libraries kind of look at groups using the library sizes and you know, a lot of group sizes of 10 to 15 would fit in a room right in here, this size, versus the bigger rooms. So, and I will say, every library that I've worked on in the last 10 years that's done an expansion, 90% of that expansion has been programming spaces, conference rooms, community meetings, smaller communities, maker spaces, media labs, group study rooms. It's all about places for people to collaborate and come together. Now with this pandemic, I think we'll all get past it some days and we'll be able to do that again. But the smaller, the study rooms actually are very advantageous in this pandemic, is because, you know, you basically have a solid glass wall separating you from others. So 2 people of a family could go in there and work and take off their masks and not, you know, be exposed to exposing anyone else. So study rooms, you know, so you might leave a middle part that's open, or you might decide that you want that quiet reading room downstairs to be a conference room, and you want to move the quiet room upstairs because there's an elevator and older people who tend to use the quiet reading room can take it up. So, I mean, I would keep it flexible, but I'd also be thinking about, you know, opportunities. Right now, I'm thinking, you know, they're looking like they're just blocking it off, but creating a hallway all the way around. That's a lot of circulation space. That's 25% probably, maybe even more than that total space out there is a corridor, which to me is wasted space. You know, what we try to do is have no corridors if at all possible. So obviously you got to get to the stair. So you need that corridor by the restrooms. But again, yeah, they're not showing mechanical anywhere in any of these buildings. So I'm not sure how they're doing mechanical. And that's a big question.
Hey, Danelle?
Yes.
Yeah, Dave Street. I'm the IT director for the city. I've just got a little concern. Your IT room that you're showing, is that in the exact same location it is now?
The existing one?
Yes.
Yes, I haven't touched that.
Okay, well, yeah, that was my main concern because all the fiber goes into that room. So making it bigger would be great, but moving it wouldn't be very good because it would be very, we'd have a substantial cost to move all the fiber from where it is now to a different location.
Yeah, I wasn't touching that room.
So basically where you have it, that's the existing, but you've just made it like bigger.
I took out the book returns, the only thing's not shown there.
Okay. Yeah, that was my only concern. I'm not very good at reading plans.
But yeah, because we were showing the book return in the new workroom, the walk up, the outside. So I was just I thought it might help to take out that wall, or that little book return area could be storage either.
Yeah,
That's
that
really
would be great. Yeah.
It's just not that great a location already. And with the staff moving to the work area, over into the new building, it just makes sense to get it there where it makes
Yeah,
sense.
we have the Time Warner fiber, all the fiber we've run between the buildings and all terminate inside of that little room. So, I was just kind of worried if we tried to move the room location to somewhere else, it wouldn't be cheap to move everything.
Right. Now, the question is whether you need a second one in the new building. And again, and then run fiber between that and, for that second one to make the runs shorter to, all the places in the new
I'm not
building.
sure what Josh is planning for that side, whether he's planning on having some little IT room where you can run the council meeting out of sight. I mean, I don't know what he's got planning. There was talk of that.
Well, they show a huge IT room in the meeting pod, the new strip of meetings. It's huge.
I think that's what he's planning, is to put all equipment in there so that you're not sitting in the council chambers to run the council meetings.
But it's a long ways from that council chamber. But it's huge. I mean, it's almost 20 by 10. It's 200 square feet. I've never seen an IT room in huge buildings big. So I have no idea.
Yeah, you and me both, then I'm sorry.
So that might be a potential for, I mean, it's really that city space to use over in that addition, part of the addition. I just think they, maybe they have other storage ideas, others as well. I don't know.
Okay.
But
yeah, thank you for clearing that up for me.
I took half of it away.
Yes, thank you, Danelle.
I'm trying to see. Oh, and then one of the other comments was, make sure we have enough floor outlets. Right now, I'm showing just floor outlets where we need them. We can do a lot with wall outlets, and floor outlets are great, but they do cost about $2,000 each compared to a wall outlet that's a couple hundred. And part of the reason is because they're cast into the floor slab, and they have big fancy covers and carpet inserts, and they're just big, and they bring the power and the data, and you have options. You can bring, multiples. I could show a couple more, in the future if there's less shelving and there's, more. So like where we show on the plan, I show 2 benches because I found that benches in the collection, encourage browsing, and circulation often goes up when we do that. But you could put power there, and so if some of that one range went away in the future, which is where some libraries are going, especially with their nonfiction as it's shrinking, that you could add more tables or pods or other seating in there if we added 2 more floor outlets. It all comes down to dollars always. Asking for the right amount, but not too much so they don't start nickel and diming and cutting everything. But I'm happy to show as many as you want. I show less in children's, especially for the younger children. They're potentially a hazard. And so we want to be, you have to have plugs on, covers on them so little kids aren't sticking things in them. I did put them obviously at the computer, and we could still leave one there. You could put, interactive kiosk or it could be a Christmas tree at a time, or it could be, anything that needed power. So having power, even if we move those computers along the wall, like we talked about, I would probably still leave the floor box there. And I'd have one where we need one for a help desk. And I think there's probably one there because it's right where some of those existing computers are, where they turn the corner. So there's probably one close to there. But I was adding some for the older kids' tables where they might want to have laptops and came in to work on a project, which reminds me, the comment about more tables for 4. You can put 4 chairs at any of these tables. The reason I don't is very rarely do 4 sit together, and you can steal chairs. So maybe we put 3 at each of these, and if 4 wants to, you can pull a chair. But a good study chair is $250 to $300. And if we put in 4 chairs at every one and no one ever sits more than 1 or 2, we spent thousands of dollars that's not needed, and they take up space. The other thing I found is we've gone to these smaller tables because you can put 2 together and now you can seat 6. And almost every library is taking out their big tables and put small ones. It gives them flexibility to pull them apart, put them together, and get more seating. So, excuse me, I gotta go let my dog out real quick. It'll take 2 seconds. Come on. She was scratching. So we can show a few more tables. And again, we're not really doing the furniture right now, but it's really important that we show things that work and reflect what you want, so that we know it works within the space.
Hey,
Danelle?
Now, in the adult section where the shelving is, those are 2 benches in between the shelving, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
See,
Okay.
that's where we could add outlets there, because in the future, if some of the shelving went away, you might put seating in there. So that's the one place if I was going to add any more floor outlets.
Okay. I thought that's what you meant, but I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yes.
Danelle, I have a question relating to the mezzanine is kind of a U-shaped mezzanine. And so the lighting into the area not covered by the mezzanine would probably be way up on the ceiling, correct, of the 2-story structure? Is that going to be?
Well,
is that going to be kind of something that you will recommend? What kind of lighting is shown throughout this new building?
Yes, I mean, I would definitely recommend LED lighting. And I would recommend that it's suspended, linear, that's direct and indirect. So some of it's bouncing up and some of it's bouncing down. So usually it's 70-30, or you can get 60-40, but it depends on the spacing. And the electrical engineer would want to, run photometrics to make sure they do spacing right. But what that does is it gives a nice diffuse lighting. So no matter how you rotate shelving or whatever, you just get nice even. You don't get glare on computer screens, even though that's less of an issue than before. I don't know, one of the questions had to do with ceiling heights. I don't know any of that. I don't have any of that information. So if the ceilings aren't high enough, you can't do that. In libraries, we recommend 12-foot, if at all possible, so that you can do that indirect lighting and hang it down and have it at 10 feet. The tall ceilings, you can hang it down because the problem is if you don't, changing those lamps. Now, again, LED lasts a lot longer. That's the other reason. I mean, it's just, there would be no excuse to put in anything but LED lighting in this building at this time. And I would recommend changing it out in the main open area of the existing building too, if all possible. Again, it comes down to dollars. And I haven't seen any numbers on any budgets that, if any, have been established for this. If they have, it would be helpful because that would help make recommendations. It's like when you go to buy a car, are you buying a Chevy? Are you buying a BMW? Are you buying a Tesla or a Volkswagen? What is your budget level on what to look at? And there's certain areas, in my opinion, where it's best to spend your money. Lighting is one of them. I'm working with Shreveport right now. These buildings, well, they're 20 years old, but we're changing all the lighting. If it had been better lighting, if they hadn't cut the budget 20 years ago, they wouldn't be doing that now. So I think lighting is really important. I think flooring is very important. It's getting less so as there's less shelving and more shelvings on casters, so it's easier to replace. But good flooring will last 30 plus years, and so it's a good investment. It's not it's a different type building, gets a lot of heavy use, so I think flooring. And the extra comment about warmth and personality of the small community library, I think color is so important in that. Many architects are afraid of color, and so everything's white and gray. And when I asked them, they said, "Oh, well, the furnishings can add color." Well, yes, they can, but paint is cheap, and getting some color on the walls draws your attention. It can offset things that are in front of it. It can be changed over time, but color gives that sense of warmth that I think is really, really important, especially in the children's. And that's one of the great things, some of the positives of having this new addition somewhat separate is that, you have an opportunity to create different zones. So children's can be, colorful and playful and fun, and teens might be more like a Genius Bar or Apple Store, something more trendy and cool with furniture and color. You could even maybe put some fun window film on the glass, in the little enclosed area. And adults can have a completely different feel. And even you could change it back in quiet reading. San Marcos, is doubling their size, and the new addition, the quiet reading room, which is at the back of the library, has a completely different feel with wood paneling and different lights, and it's got a more traditional feel than the rest of the library. Again, giving people options in different spaces for different atmospheres, I think makes a huge difference.
Danelle, would you elaborate on the flooring that you were telling me about that's made from the recycled water bottles?
Yeah, it's by J&J Flooring, and it's called Kinetics. And it is woven, and I can send you some samples, put them in the mail. It's called soft flooring, and a couple manufacturers make it. Some make it like a real tight cut pile. This is a woven. It has, they keep bringing out more and more patterns. Most people would just assume it's carpet when they walk on it, but its acoustics are very similar to carpet because it's got a soft back behind it, so the sound goes through the woven down to the back. On new concrete, people really like it because it breathes. So you can't put flooring down on new concrete until it's got a very, very low moisture content, especially with a rubber back carpet tile because it traps that moisture. Where the moisture would evaporate through it. It also has a lifetime warranty on any stain except motor oil. Now, you know, it can be cleaned with water and soap, and it's tiles, like carpet tiles. Some are planks and some are square. I mean, the first time I used it, well, I've used it in a lot of libraries now, but one of the first times we used it was in Plano, Texas, in their City Hall lobby. They had tile down and noisy, and that space opened directly into their council chambers. And so we wanted to get something softer in there that was quieter. And they've liked it so much, they've used it in a lot of their buildings, and in all the libraries, when they put in interior AMS, automated material handling systems, with the big, you know, conveyor belts and the big carts rolling around, they put it in all of those areas because carts and things roll really easy on it, but it's durable and it helps with acoustics. So again, I can cut you, I have some big tiles, but I'll cut some smaller pieces and stick them in an envelope and you can look on it. And I thought did I send you that link to the website?
You did, and I shared the link with everyone. I would love to see a couple of samples. Thank you.
Okay.
I was surprised
when I
I'm sorry.
Coming out with some new patterns. We're using one of their new ones in a couple of the libraries in Calcasieu Parish. Calcasieu Parish, yeah. It's just delayed because of the hurricane, but yeah,
I was surprised when I went to that website to see how much it looked like carpet. It was in some really nice looking patterns.
There are, and you can do fun things with colors. Like what we've done, if you picked one carpet, you know, for adult, it could then transition into different carpet in teens and then a different to children's, or teens and children's could be similar but different colors of that same pattern. There's lots of different things you can do that also are kind of wayfinding to tell people, okay, I've gone in a different zone. And because they're carpet tiles, they can be, you know, changed out and rearranged, and so it gives you some flexibility. But yeah, I can put those in the mail. I'm trying to go back over this list because we did jump around a little. Let's see if I skipped anything or if people have any other questions.
I have a couple questions. For the carpet, is that part of the renovation budget? I know furniture is not, but carpet and lighting is part of the budget.
I have no
That's
idea.
my understanding that electrical outlets and flooring is part of the budget. Josh can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's part of it.
Okay.
Or anything in the new building, anything like that in the new building that involves the building itself.
Okay, and also I don't think we've addressed the columns yet, just as a reminder.
Well, I think they're right. There's two of them they're showing. This is their drawing right now. And they just have them at the two corners of the mezzanine. And then there obviously will be one in the wall of the bathroom. This is their drawing, not mine, but that's where they show the two columns. And you can see they're showing another whole wall outside the other wall, but this is the drawing where they were showing one opening. And so we may have this column for their metal building that would be just past our opening. So there would be a column right here. So if we go back to our plan, there'll be one right here, but then they're also showing one here. I'm sorry, I can't understand this question.
Oh, I'm sorry, you recognizing me?
Well, someone was talking and I couldn't hear. I couldn't understand. It just sounded like noise.
It was background noise. I just have a real quick question on the power outlets that you just said were budgeted for. one suggestion to future-proof this would be to get the 10 amp, the 2 gang and 4 gang power outlets, is to include 10 amp USB ports.
Yes.
It adds about $5 each. So I don't know how much is that, if the budget is real tight, you know, maybe strategic locations for that. I don't know how many outlets. I don't see the electrical plans here. This is just the framing. But
yeah, what I put recommended wall outlets and floor outlets for that addition. And yes, any new building in the last 5 years, we've been putting the USB. It's just, that's what everyone's using to charge. Now they don't tend to do that at floor outlets.
Oh, right, absolutely. You know, they can run the conduit and the slab to those outlets and take care of that, and do 4 gang there. But in the walls on the 2 gang and 4 gang outlets, at the very least, strategically place ones with the 10 amp USB ports and outlets.
So you'd want at least one of those in each of the study rooms and at all the tables along the walls.
Anywhere where a
person
patron is going to be staying, and probably at workstations for staff as well. Just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Yep. No, you're absolutely right.
Danelle, if I could, I'd like to jump in real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Kevin, I'm the council liaison. From a council perspective, I'm very appreciative of everybody being so conscious about cost. Certainly, I'm going to be one that's going to have to vote to approve the cost ultimately, so I appreciate those efforts. But I want to also look on the other side, and that is, you know, we talked about the wall, and I know Paul Roberts and Mitch, a lot of their comments about that were revolving around cost. I know people had other reasons why they didn't want it. And the only comment I wanted to make is that, you know, we approved a couple of years ago, $60,000 per green for 3 greens to get them replaced at the golf course. We just approved in the most recent budget 3 more at the cost of $80,000 per green. We're talking about putting millions of dollars over at the new park over on 1431. We are spending more money on amenities in Lago Vista than we have in the past. And I would say that when this item came up for approval, the past council approved it unanimously with very little discussion. There wasn't pushback about the library expansion and renovation and so forth. And I don't believe there will be that pushback from the future council. And so all I would really like to say is that if you have items that you think that you want and that you can justify very well, like Danelle, you talked about lighting and replacing it with LED, even going back into the old part of the library, or the flooring, and spending a little bit more on flooring to get a better product, or the outlets or whatever, or even the wall, for example, if there could be justifications for it, please don't be afraid to make that part of what you put together. Obviously, the council can say no, but if you don't ask for it, then you know for sure you will not get it. So anyway, thank you for letting me make those comments.
Well, I appreciate that, because that's really the right way to approach it. You know, we don't need a Tesla library, but we do want one that's going to use the dollars wisely and be, you know, have good life cycle value over the next 30 years, because this probably there won't be more money probably for a long time. Yeah.
Exactly. That's my exact point. If we're going to do it, let's do it. And I don't want a Tesla either, but I don't want a 50-year-old VW Bug either.
Right. You don't want to be having things break and fall down. And that's going to be important for the HVAC. And that's one ticket item that is worth that architects and engineers looking and giving the cities, in my opinion, multiple options on first-time cost and operating costs to see what the payback is on different units, just like you might do on your house. And also what kind of units the city's maintenance staff, if they maintain HVAC equipment themselves, what kind are they comfortable and have the expertise. I've had some projects where, and again, I wasn't the architect, I was a consultant on it, but the AE firm put in really fancy HVAC and fancy lighting controls, and they then had to hire out anyone to do any maintenance, and the lighting controls, no one could figure out, and they were more frustrating than a help. So doing things that help you, like, I mean, light switches, you can gang a bunch of light switches in one place, like in the meeting room, you might, depending on how it's being used, have a simple lighting control that does 3 different options. You're going to have the projection screen and a speaker, on how you want. So the screen comes down and there's light at the speaker, but the rest of it is dimmable for, presentation or that kind of thing. Just sometimes these engineers go crazy, and sometimes simple, good quality is the safer way to go, unless, you have some of that expertise in-house.
Danelle, I appreciate the recommendations like this that you're making, and the ones that Paul just made too. It would be nice to have those in hand, when we're working with this, so that there are not shortcuts that will end up costing us in the long run or cause problems for us. So these are some of the things that I would not have known. So I like the acoustics of the door separating the big meeting room, the new meeting room. That's something we want to be very cautious about. So if you can give us a list of those kind of things, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, a lot of them should be in that preliminary program. I'll go back and look, and maybe pull out the ones that are important, but I can create a list.
I have to say, it's ironic also, you mentioned going back and putting things in and taking them out. When we talk about the family restroom that's planned, that's where we used to have a family restroom that was taken out in the last expansion because we were going to have the new ones put in. So looks like we'll be putting one back in the same place.
Well, that should make it a little easier.
Plumbing should all be there.
Yeah. Should be just capped off probably, huh? So. Okay, anybody have anything else?
I have a quick question for the chairwoman.
Go ahead.
Is this, at what point are you guys going to be looking at the real minutia of what's going in, such as, self-learning thermostats, open or closed cell foam insulation, 3.5 inches versus 6 inches? The things that can really affect the overall budget of this. Has that conversation already occurred, or is it yet to occur?
I have no idea is the answer to that question. Go ahead.
I don't want to start making suggestions I would like to make suggestions at the appropriate time. And I would just like to know if that's forthcoming still.
It's forthcoming. We have not talked about that yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is all under the purview of the architects and engineers that were hired to do this addition. Just for clarification, my role and the committees to date, not to say that the committee can't get involved with the architects moving forward on those kind of things, but was to come up with a plan, a functional plan, library plan that is flexible and works and reflects the library, and to give so that the local architects know where to put rooms, what kind of rooms and how open and where things should be. And that was the limit or the scope of what this group was doing right now, which was to come up with a concept plan, because they were concentrating on the shell of the building. But the shell and the inside work together. So it's hard to, we had to comment on both actually, because windows where they are make a difference on what's happening inside the building. And so the furniture part is really a test at this point. And the test part is very important because we want to make sure we get so many computers and so many lounge chairs and study tables and things for teens and all that. So we just want to make sure we have the space. So I hope that answers your question, Paul.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for the clarification.
And typically for the rest of the committee, typically a building design process before it gets priced and built. Now, I think this one is still design build. Is that correct? It's a contractor and an architect together, or are they going to architects designing and engineers designing it and then putting it out for public bid?
The latter. I think that changed when the last builder backed out. So that, I believe it's changed to what the last one you were talking about.
Okay, which is design bid build is what it's called. And so
Well, design build was the original concept, but I think now they'll just be putting a bid out for a new builder. Is that what you meant?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The architects will design it and then they'll put it out for bids and select someone to then build it.
Yes.
And so that design part traditionally had 3 phases. What they've done to date is what we would call, what I've seen to date is schematic plan. So you have a plan and an elevation, but it's still preliminary. And an early budget based on some standards on how many dollars a square foot an addition should, this type building should cost. Then they go into design development. And design development, so the first phase is usually 15% of their fee. Design development's another 20% typically. And that time they do work out every wall, what type of wall, doors, is it a glass door, is it a solid door, what the finishes are, is it paint, is it carpet. Some make all the selections on exactly what that material is. Others will just say it's carpet or it's sealed concrete or, so that phase is a little, varies from firm to firm. When I do it, I like to make all the decisions that have a cost impact. So then you do another cost estimate and you know what it's going to cost. And then the next phase, so you spent 35% of your time. The next phase is usually, well, and now with 3D design and Revit, we probably spent more like 40 or 45%. So then you have the next 30% or so is where you're doing the details. So how is that wall constructed? How does the contractor know? Does it have sound and bats in it? Is it 1 layer, 2 layers? Is it glass? How that glass is hitting? How the steel connects, the HVAC, all the details of the drawings and the spec book. And then when that's done, you typically do another final estimate on any things, but usually it does not change much from DD to CDs, and then it goes out for pricing. And so that middle area, in my opinion, is where the look is decided. So colors are selected, materials are selected, the details of what kind of floor box it is, if you care about that, what HVAC system it is, the size of all the structural members, so clearances and that, and ceiling heights and ceiling materials and all of that. So that's typically how it's done. Some projects like, I'll go use Bulverde for instance. I did this kind of thing with the architects during schematic design, but then I also at design development helped with selection of finishes and colors and reviewed their drawings for functional things for libraries, like where they had the book return slot and what height and what type it should be. Checking to make sure, that floor box is the kind that a patron could open or get access to and use if we want it. Making sure that what they're doing is coordinating with any furniture or equipment that the library is going to have. That kind of thing. So it's kind of, I created this long list of lessons learned and looking through the drawings and raising comments, like in the restroom, is there hand dryers? If so, what kind, where they're located, you know, what kind of toilet accessories, what kind of sink, you know, works, are they wall hung, which most public facilities would want, you know, so all that kind of thing sometimes, and raising them as questions, just so a group like this could decide what made sense with having dollar amounts, you know, to, okay, yeah, we could do this and it costs this much, or we do this and it's $5 cheaper, you know, a square foot, and yeah, we like it better and we think it works better, so we'll go with the, you know, cheaper one, or the more expensive one because of it has this benefit. That's where all the value engineering typically happens in design development. That's the best time, because when it waits to the end, then there's a lot more impact it has on changing drawings and specs. So if you can make good decisions in that middle section, you're better off, everyone's better off. And no one comes back and says, oh, you're changing something now. You know, I want to pay extra to change the drawings, kind of thing. So I probably rambled on way too long, but.
No, that is,
I think you gave us some input there, Danelle. We're really at the trying to come to an end to the schematic design.
Right.
And then we've got, you said on a timeline, 35% of your time then of your total project is then consumed on the more specific design.
Right.
So, and are we trying to complete the schematic design by the end of December?
We've never been given a schedule that I'm aware of. I think that would be a nice goal. It would be good to just get it and get it in their hands. Unfortunately, Janet or I have never had any conversations with, you know, the architectural firm to know what their schedule are. I don't know if they've been working, you know, for the last few months since we saw their last drawings, what were they dated? I'm trying to remember what they were dated.
Is it August?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was August.
August 4th.
Go ahead. What I was going to say is that particular thing that you're talking about now really troubles me about the disconnect between the various participants, and that you can get into trouble on a lot of issues if you don't get together on a team. And like you said, there's no schedule or even a high level schedule where people have an idea what they're shooting at, right? That's been very troublesome to me up to this point.
So Mike, hey, this is Kevin. I've created a list of questions that I have for Josh. And one of those is trying to understand the process and the timeline. And I'll try and get that information from him and then bring that back to the committee.
And I have a question, Danelle. At the point we are now, would you like me to ask Josh if we could arrange some kind of like a Zoom meeting or go-to meeting with you and the architect and anyone else that, Josh and anyone else that wants, so that you can ask the questions that you have?
Well, I think it would be helpful for also, and I don't know what's been shared with them that we've been working on, you know, know if they have any concerns with us taking out one of the pair of the entrance doors, or, you know, all the different changes we've been making. I changed some of the windows on the front so that they didn't go down to the floor at the, you know, staff work area and the part of the living room, so you could have power along that wall. So we really can't finalize it, or it would not be good to finalize it without having a conversation with them, because they may have heartburn about something we're doing and may have a good reason that I'm just not aware of. I mean, you're absolutely right. This is an unusual way to be doing a project like this. And so just the more conversations we can have. Yeah, and again, you know, I'm not the architect of record. My job, as I see it, and Jan, correct me if I'm wrong, is just to be a resource based on my knowledge of public libraries and public library design, to make sure that the city gets gets a good building for their dollars, one that's going to work for them for years to come.
Yeah.
Well, I probably talked about this in the past meetings, but I think I really appreciate Kevin's input about doing this building correctly and the project correctly. My perception is that we were presented last fall, a year ago, with a building that was going to be built with a set amount of dollars. And that is what, and they had selected the contractor based upon the bids they got in November between two firms, Craftsman and Gophers. And so they selected the contractor, and subsequent to his backing out during this year, I think we are back down at the point where we can actually go through this process in the proper manner. And it gives us an opportunity to get through this schematic design, rally the troops and the partners to this, and go through the timeline in the proper manner and get it built. So I appreciate Kevin and Danelle's input on all this, so we can kind of garner it again and get the product we really want.
I would like to add too that the project got slowed down because of the coronavirus too. That was a big, that was a big problem. Danelle was not able to travel down here. We were right after the contract was signed with her, the library closed down. So that's been one of the main issues. So now we're kind of like trying to get it going. And so it was not the fault of anyone that it slowed down. It's just that's what's going on in the world right now. So hopefully we'll be able to pick up speed again and I get going again.
Well, I don't think anybody's trying to blame anybody. It's just the approach is it seems from my point of view, it's been disconnected. And that's very troublesome because that's where you start to get into issues later on that cost money. Where at the front, if you can get together, we all get in the same boat. Everybody's, when I say everyone, I mean you as the head of the group that's designing the library and your resources that are helping you and Danelle have a plan, if you will, which is we're trying to lay out. And that is integrated with the others plan, the architect and so on, such that you don't step in it someplace and it's going, oh, well, you know, and then the well is always means dollars. So I'm just encouraging everyone to try to get an integrated approach to getting the project done, right? So we'll all be real happy. And as taxpayers, we'll feel that we got value for what money we're spending. So got a couple of different cats to skin there. I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade or blame anybody or anything. It's just a concern that I have from past experiences is when people don't get together and talk to each other enough, you make a lot of costly mistakes, or costly mistakes can be made. So just trying to encourage participation, cooperation, and that sort of thing. Getting a project timeline together and, you know, who's got the ball on what kind of issues and that sort of stuff. That's my, my suggestion, that's all.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mike. Because I have felt kind of responsible because of just all the things we've been having to do and not being able to put our complete focus on this project at certain times. So it's nice to be going. And as a taxpayer myself, I am always conscious of whose money we're spending when we do something in this library. So I want to, I don't want to skimp and be cheap, want to do things the right way, but I also want to not waste money too, so.
And the other thing is as well, you're getting input from people like me that are clueless about how libraries ought to be designed and stuff like that. they're just suggestions, in that we rely on you and Danelle and others that actually know something about this. So where there's an impasse, where there's a dispute, you just step up and say, look, we've considered your input and we appreciate it, but here's what we're going to do. And I don't think anybody would be offended by that, right? Because I would respect your position as seasoned professionals in your field, and you just decided to do what you thought was best. So I think everyone should keep that in mind if they don't already know that. Maybe I'm preaching to the choir, but anyway, go
You
for
know
it.
me, I'm not shy. I'll say what I think.
We're behind you. We'll support you no matter what you decide. And we'll try to get you the money in whatever way possible. We got Kevin, as our advocate, and hopefully. And I think it's going to turn out just great. Just trying to give some suggestions to let's go about the right way.
Well, thank you. I just got a text from Dave. We're going to have to wrap up our meeting because he has to start another one in about 4 minutes.
All right, well, I think we accomplished a lot. So my just next step, I will revise the concept plan based on our conversations today, and get that out next week. And wait to see when we might be able to have, a go-to or Zoom or some kind of meeting with the city and the design team so that we can make sure we got a plan that everyone thinks is doable. So.
Well, thank you, Danelle. I'll contact Josh too and see if we can find a time to get together with the architect. And we
Okay.
appreciate your time and your knowledge, sharing your knowledge with us so much. We're really glad to have you on board with our project. And I thank all of the everyone for being involved and being so supportive of the library. I love you guys, all of you.
Well, yeah, that's what makes library special, is all the great community support. So it's appreciated by all.
We have a great community. Well, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for your attendance, everyone, and your contributions.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon, for keeping us on track.
Thanks, Sharon. Danelle, I'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you. Bye.